Good morning, and apologies because I intended to record this video a couple of days ago when it first broke, and I had other videos to make, and I also sat in on a couple of podcasts with the GAMECAST guys, and I'll put a link in to those guys, and keep your eyes open because, as I say, I'm in on a couple of their podcasts, so if you want to hear me drone on some more, try and look out for those. But let's get to what I want to talk about today, and specifically what it is the UK Gambling Commission and their 2018 report on young people and gambling. And I woke up on, I think it was Tuesday, and there was a report going on the radio as I was getting breakfast ready, and they were talking about this. And it seems there's been a massive increase in gambling in the UK among teenagers and young people. And when I say teenagers and young people, that specifically means 11 to 16-year-olds. And if you think about that, gambling for 11 to 16-year-olds is actually illegal. So it seems to me that this is a big issue. And this is what they say. They say that over the past 12 months, 39% of 11 to 16-year-olds have spent their own money on gambling. And, you know, there may be various reasons for that. One of the reasons I think is that we've got advertising on TV sports channels all times of the day and night. You literally can't get away from gambling ads. And frankly, I'm sick, sorry and tired of seeing Ray Winston's mug staring out at me every time there's an ad break during a football match. But anyway, that's an aside. What I'm more specifically interested in here, though, surprise, surprise, is loot boxes. And the Commission in their report say that 31% of kids, that's 11 to 16-year-olds, have ever opened loot boxes in a computer game or app to try to acquire in-game items, while 3% claim to have ever bet in-game items. So we've got a large number of kids who are in effect gambling within video games. And that could well go on to be a problem in the future because the Gambling Commission don't say this in so many words, but in effect, these kids who are, well, in effect gambling on loot boxes are being introduced to gambling at a young age. And when you consider some of the games that, you know, include loot boxes, things like FIFA, I think FIFA's got an age rating of 3 and over. Kids are being introduced to gambling mechanics at a very young age. And while the 2017 report from the Gambling Commission concentrated on exchanging in-game items for money, or what they called skins betting, they are now looking at loot boxes a bit more specifically. Even in 2017, though, it was clear to people like me and, you know, bigger YouTubers like Jim Sterling, who, well, he's done a sterling job on keeping this front and center. People like us have been saying for years now that this is an inherent problem within the loot box system. And you know, it doesn't just apply to when skins are bet on external websites for real world money. It's an inherent problem with loot boxes themselves. And, you know, we were saying that it's a problem that's waiting to rear its head, you know, down the line, that we're going to end up creating a generation of kids who think that gambling is perfectly normal. And the Gambling Commission now seems to agree, because in the section of the report entitled Online Participation, they've added a paragraph specifically concerning online gambling style games. And this is what they say. This section examines young people's participation in online activities from a variety of perspectives. These include online gambling where young people spent their own money, online gambling where young people used their parents' or guardians' accounts, either with or without the account holder's permission, and this is the important one, participation in online gambling style games, Games which look and play like gambling games such as roulette or poker, but are free to play without a prize and without age restrictions. So they're specifically looking at those kind of games now. There was one other as well. It says awareness and participation rates for skins gambling activity, described in the survey as gambling with in-game items when playing computer games or apps. So those two are very specifically relating to computer games. And they continue. Skins are in-game items used within some of the most popular video game titles. They provide cosmetic alterations to a player's weapons, avatar, or equipment used in the game. They then go on to talk more specifically about converting in-game items to real money and all that kind of stuff, so they're going back on that one again. But the fact that they've brought up loot boxes specifically is, well, it's particularly interesting here. And I think it does show that they are turning their spotlight on what is going on in a lot of these games. What they say next, though, is particularly damning. And this is what they say. Overall, based on the description provided, 54% of 11 to 16-year-olds were aware that it is possible to pay money or use in-game items to open loot boxes, crates, or packs to get other in-game items within the game you are playing. And they go on to say, and 31% had ever used in-game items in this way. So 31% have been using loot boxes. It gets worse though, because they go on to say somewhat fewer young people, 15%, were aware that it is possible to bet with in-game items on websites outside of the game or privately, for example with friends. And only 3% claim to have done this. But that means that they're already aware that you can take this to the next level, that you can actually start betting with these things for real money. I still think there's a little bit too much of an emphasis being put on the ability to trade skins for real world currency. And while that is a big problem in and of itself, I think the longer term impact of loot boxes introducing children to gambling like processes are maybe even a bigger problem. But at least the Gambling Commission seem to be moving in the right direction, and they seem to be taking the idea of loot boxes as gambling seriously. It's about time too, because think about it. Your kid sits down to play a game that's aimed at 7-year-olds or even 3-year-olds, and they're being exposed to this. You know, it's taken a while for the Gambling Commission to finally start to take loot boxes, crates, packs, whatever you want to call them, seriously. And for good reason. You know, this is a fairly new phenomenon. And the fact is government agencies, regulatory bodies take a while to catch up. But, you know, it is good that they are actually sitting up and taking notice. But what can we expect to happen next? From a personal point of view, I'd like to see that loot boxes are categorised as gambling, categorically. You know, that wouldn't remove them from games, but it would mean that they would be regulated and would therefore not be as accessible to kids. Because loot boxes, crates, they are gambling. It's obvious to anybody who spends any time with them. And the fact that 15% of kids in this survey are already aware of the fact that you can bet on skins outside of the games, well, that should scare the shit out of you if you're a parent. Where adults are concerned, as long as they aren't vulnerable in some way, well, my personal view on this is that adults should be able to do whatever the hell they like with their money and their bodies, just so long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. And, you know, yes, some adults will develop problems and those need to be addressed. But it's no coincidence that religions want to inculcate children into the fold early. They know that if you can get kids while they're young, you will likely have them for life. And it's no bloody different here. Kids who are exposed to loot boxes in video games are going to be more likely to go on to gambling. Is that a revelation to anyone? Is anyone surprised at that idea? Maybe EA and others are. But, the likes of EA who don't believe loot boxes to be gambling, they know that it is. And they know that it's enticing kids to gamble. They're sitting there counting their money while society stores up problems for the future. As I say, look, adults could do whatever the hell they like and, spend their money on whatever. And if it's not hurting anyone else, then fine. But would you actually think it was a good idea to let the local drug dealer set up in a school? Because that's what these companies are doing. They're flogging addiction to children for profit. The Belgian authorities know it. The Netherlands authorities know it. The guys in Hawaii know it. And now the UK Gambling Commission seems to know it too. And look, loot boxes are probably here to stay. But they are now going to get regulated. And I agree with Jim Sterling. I would rather that the companies had sat up and done their jobs and stopped this early on and actually self-regulated. But they were too busy looking at the money they were making and not caring about the fallout from that. And when they do that, they are asking for trouble. And what will happen is we will see regulation, and it will probably be tighter regulation than we actually want, because that's what regulatory bodies do. They take a sledgehammer to crack a nut. So one way or another, as gamers, we're probably going to suffer in some way. But frankly, I'd rather that things like, FIFA, NBA, those kind of games were more heavily regulated, and I don't even care if those games are affected in some way, because the reality is that those games have been affected negatively by loot boxes already. And if we can get rid of loot boxes, well, I'll take whatever we get if we can get rid of this egregious practice and stop peddling this shit to kids. And you know what? I hope the likes of EA refuses to abide with the new laws and they get a bloody nose over this, because I'm sick of them showing literally no concern for their customers or their customers' kids. As I said before, they know what they're bloody doing. It's despicable. And the sooner they're brought to task, the better. But hey, look, I know that some of you guys probably disagree with me on this. You probably think I'm just getting on my high horse for the sake of it, or that I'm talking a load of old rubbish. And if you do, let me know in the comments. And if you agree with me, come and agree with me as well, because that's always nice. But let's have a chat about it, because this is one I've gone on about for some time, and I know people, a bit like Brexit, people are sick of hearing about this. But it's still an issue and it still needs to be addressed. And I'm just glad that the UK Gambling Commission seems to be looking at it more seriously now. Let's see what happens. And in the meantime, I'm going to get myself a cup of tea and I will speak to you guys in the next one. Bye.